Thanks for joining us today on the Nurturist Pod, where we help nurture your path and unleash your passions. What's up with you, man?
Not too much. Thanks for having me on and excited to chat.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, as I was checking out your website, I noticed that you have a little stealth project going on right now. Is that right?
Yes,
I
not intentionally stealth in terms of I'm usually more a fan of building in public, but it's just very early stages. So still trying to work it all out.
got you, man. No, that's super exciting. And I guess just taking a step back as well, how many startups have you?
Depends on the definition of founded.
Okay.
Because like in terms of ones where I've raised over 1 million 3 times. So three in terms of ones where I've had full-time employees and things like that, but probably more like 10 if it includes ones that I've built a website or built a logo and launched something. And those have ranged from like, maybe I spent a month on it, didn't get the validation or the traction I wanted to see, or got more excited about something else. So short answer is like three that are definitely startups, but then plenty of other projects or hackathons or things like that along the way too.
Dude, that's so much fun. No, I love that. I know we chatted once in the past, but I just think it's so unique. I love the fact that you've gone out there and yeah, maybe you've had a couple failed projects, but just the fact that you've been able to go out there, experiment and try these different things, I think it's super cool. I think there's a lot of good learning lessons, I'm sure, from each one of those ventures that you took on. And yeah, man, just winding back a little bit then. So, I know you're an ex-Googler. So, how long did you work there for?
About 6 or 7 months.
Okay, gotcha. And what did you do there?
I was on like the mobile apps strategy team, which sounds cooler than it is. It felt
Yeah.
very much like learning a Google specific product called AdMob and then helping account management on helping some of their partners with monetization of ads.
Okay, cool. Sounds exciting.
It was not.
No, wasn't your thing?
It depends. Like
Yeah.
there's a quote from Naval Ravikant that once you've had a taste of freedom, it can make a person unemployable. And I felt that very much at Google, where it was like, I have nothing bad to say about Google. Like probably the best manager I've ever worked with. Really
Mm.
good in terms of like team processes. Obviously, like they're known for their pay and benefits and just treating employees right. But I missed you said the word excitement. Like I missed the excitement. I think startups were just like a lot of fun. And I think for me, like it just, a lot of it felt like going back to the being told what to do and then doing it and not really
Yeah.
the just like creativity or also just like the unknown of just trying to figure something out and having no idea of where to start.
No, and I think that's the fun part about entrepreneurship, right? Is just figuring out the problem, strategizing, and trying to figure out how to overcome that roadblock or whatever it is you're facing. And no, that's super cool. But that makes sense. And even though Google's Google, there's still other things that may be more exciting specifically for you. So was that Google? Was that your first job, or what was your first employer? What was your first job that you ever took on?
Yeah, the short rundown is Gerber Charleston, went to Vanderbilt, started a company right out of college.
Okay.
Then that one kind of gave to my co-founder and I became an advisor and then took the job at Google. And then since then, I've been back more fully into startups. So it was, I guess Google was more the sandwich
Okay.
between startup than Google than startups.
So you had a startup, gave it to your co-founder, went to Google, and then started your own projects. That's super cool. Was there something with that first project that maybe, I don't know, you felt like you needed more experience, or what was it that made you go, I guess, to the 9 to 5 when you already had something that was going?
It wasn't really going. And that's part
Okay.
of why I went
That
to
makes
the
sense then.
9 to 5 is raised some money. And I made all the first time founder mistakes of hiring too quickly before getting the product market fit,
Mm.
spending money on things we didn't need. The concept as well was not really differentiated. It wasn't really in a market. It was different and a lot of different learning for that. But funny enough, like I applied to Google a bunch when I was in college, I think like 20 times or something. I never got in and then had this startup that ended up failing and then got into Google after that. So I'd always
Interesting.
wanted to work there, but and also when I graduated college, I didn't have a job or anything lined up. So part of me like had to start a startup, but I guess the timing of it was like we were running out of money and I needed to do something. I was also burnt out by the end of that first startup. I was burnt out. It felt like going in circles and I wanted a change of pace and trying something different.
Okay, gotcha. No, that makes plenty of sense. No, I guess with the couple projects that I've tried to start on the side, like I totally know that what you're talking about, just like the constant back and forth, going around in circles, and it's just definitely can be exhausting. No, that makes perfect sense. And from working at Google, what do you think your biggest takeaway would be? just
I
overall?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest takeaway, surprisingly, was about how to manage people. Where this lady who managed me was, I think, that the best manager that I'd had. And I'd worked some other jobs, like in college. I did a summer investment banking and things like that. But she was just very empowering in terms of a lot of the bosses I'd had in the past were micromanaging, and she was the opposite of really just trying to help support you in your role, but really giving you autonomy. And it was really, really interesting in terms of how she framed a lot of it, because I hadn't seen like that good of an example of it in past jobs. So I'd say that was the big takeaway, as well as some of the smaller processes, things, OKRs, and some of their goal setting techniques and things like that. I think were all interesting as well.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I think no matter what the 9 to 5 is, whether you are an entrepreneur or not, like there's plenty of learning experiences, whether they're really good or really bad, that you can take away from those experiences and stuff. No, that's super cool. And I guess on top of that, you obviously had started your first startup. Was that something that as a little kid, you're like, you know what, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to do this. Was that something that you had like always dreamed? Or was this something more that just kind of came about as you were in college? You had an idea with your buddy and you're like, let's do this thing.
A mix of both. I started my first business in high school, and it was with one of my best friends, Michael, and we started this a little business in our neighborhood, and I really enjoyed it. But then when I got into college, I went to Vanderbilt. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. They didn't have a business major or entrepreneurship major. I think I changed my major 6 times or something like that. And I tried for a while. I thought about investment banking, then I thought about being a doctor, and then I kind of went all over the place. Which, oddly enough, maybe a sign that I was more entrepreneurial. But then I worked with a startup one summer, really enjoyed it, and that kind of got me more interested in the path. And then when I graduated, I didn't have a job lined up, and I had this big double knee surgery incident, just from playing beach volleyball randomly,
Oh, wow.
and that put me back home for 8 months on the bed at my mom's place. And that I told myself, like, I don't have a job lined up. I don't want to just watch for 8 months. I got to start something. And so it forced me to like actually get serious about trying to come up with something. And I tried consuming a bunch of books and eventually started something, but it was something that I like built over college after trying some different things and not really liking it. And then I was forced into it a little bit after that, in a good way. In terms of, I look back at it, it's like a very good thing that happened.
For sure. It makes a ton of sense. I think it's super interesting because I know for me, at least as a little kid, like I always I want to go to the NFL. I want to play in the MLB. Like I always played sports growing up. And so that was always my dream. And now like looking at people and like what kids nowadays are wanting to be, I think it's so interesting because a lot of them are saying like TikTokers or YouTubers, they're wanting to be like these influencers. And so going back where I think you had that experience with your buddy starting the business, like I know me, I had a friend and we used to go door to door and we would sell suckers to our neighbors, right? And
Yep.
so just, I don't know, I think it's super interesting, just those experiences and little things that happen during your life that lead you to where you are. And I think more importantly, nowadays, like when you're done with high school, I feel like I would say more than 80%. I haven't done the research on this, but I would say a majority of kids coming out of high school, dude, they have no idea what they want to do,
Yeah.
where they want to go. And so, like, just trying things out, whether it's switching majors and seeing what those things are, doing different internships, I think that's so important just for you to find an actual passion and find something that you enjoy so you can do that long term in your life. And I think just by you having that little bit of experience and getting a taste of it when you're younger, like, I think that definitely influenced you long term, be able to do what you've done. No, that's super cool. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no, I resonate with that. I think it's easy, even in college, to just take like the easiest classes or like the easiest electives that are outside your major. And I think it's the best time to like experiment, to try a bunch of different stuff and try joining that band or trying that thing in film or whatever it is. It's just because
Right.
when you do start getting older, especially when you have kids or mortgage or whatever, it just gets harder and harder to experiment, whether it's on the side or in a full-time kind of capacity. So I think it is very valuable.
For sure, man. No, that's awesome. So with entrepreneurship, you've started these three or founded these three different companies. You've worked at Google. What do you think your hardest trial or roadblock is that you've had to face in your career? Whether it's being an entrepreneur or working at Google and just dealing with people that way, what would you say that was? And then also, how were you able to overcome that?
Great question. Nothing like specific jumps out. Like I can think of 1,000 little to medium sized things where I had co-founder issues with the startup and got dropped out of the blue. I had some legal kind of issues with someone. I had something where we were moving forward and then a competitor had the literally the exact same thing come out. And so like a bunch of different random moments. I'd say like in general, the main battle has been internal, where I think, especially with my first startup, I would swing much more wildly on like high highs and low lows and
Yeah.
really getting anxious about stuff. Probably just not treating people well or getting there's a bunch of learnings on that front. I'd say like in general, like hardships are just a part of startups. Even though the thing on TechCrunch and like the perfect glistening story, everything is a way bumpier road than it looks like. So I think part of just the startup journey is being able to navigate and handle that well, both internally in terms of being able to sleep at night and still enjoy life and to still enjoy your 20s and all the great things outside of startups, but also
Mhm.
externally in terms of how you relate to team members, employees, and investors when you are going through those times. So compound answer, but yeah, nothing specific jumped out, but there's been plenty of them random events and stories and things like that.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Would you, or I guess if you could give yourself one piece of advice looking back on those experiences, do you have anything specifically that you would tell yourself?
I don't know. I think in general, like a lot of the default kind of startup advice is accurate. I think persistence and tenacity is so key, but also just, I don't know if the question is more specifically tied to navigating difficulties and hardships or more towards the startup journey in general.
I would say just like in general, like looking back at your life and seeing where the different parts of your life that have ebbed and flowed, the good times, the bad times. I know you mentioned just staying level headed and not trying to have as many valleys within that process is so important to you. So looking back, starting your career, maybe it was before you even started the startup with your buddy or starting at Google. What would just be that one piece of advice that you wish you would have known just looking in hindsight now?
Yeah, I'd say high level just be to like enjoy the journey, which
Mhm.
sounds counterintuitive without knowing like later. Like I just remember in college being so anxious about what job I was going to get or what I was going to end up doing. And then even with my startup being so anxious about, okay, if this startup fails, like I'm not going to be able to get a job. I'm not going to be able to raise money again. This is that we have to make this work. And in reality, the startup world is very unique in terms it's very forgiving
Mm.
of like investors like backing people who founded multiple things and learn from their mistakes. So staying humble and learning, being adaptable, as well as just being able to, you have to just enjoy it, enjoy the ride of it. Like I'm trying to do that right now in terms of,
Yeah.
I'm not a product market fit. I still haven't succeeded, but I think there will be a day where I look back and be like, oh, I missed those kind of moments of where you have no idea what you're doing. You're just trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
it's all, I think it will make sense looking back, but it's very easy to just get so caught up into like, such things that feel very important in the moment, but in reality, taking a step back are not that life or death or as big as it might seem.
For sure. And I think that's relative for any career path that you take, right? Whether you are being an entrepreneur or you're working in regular 9 to 5, you're a lawyer, doctor, teacher. Like, I think the most important part of life is just being able to enjoy it in general. Like, enjoying something that you can do every single day that you're able to provide for your family. Like, I think that is the most important part when it comes down to it at the end of the day. And if it's not something that you enjoy, like, go find something that you do. So no, that's super cool. I love that, man. And so I personally, I've never founded any kind of startup. I've never gone through that process of raising money, talking to different investors, and just like I guess, intimidation. I'm sure it's intimidating going into those first couple meetings. So I guess, yeah, just for me, like I'm wanting to know a little bit more about that process and what raising money looked like. What were those first couple steps that you took to get in touch with investors? I guess at least for me, I wanted to know a little bit of it all and what that process looks like as a first time founder.
Yeah, definitely. I could go through a lot of things that I did wrong with my first startup that I think are the better way to approach things now. Using is an easy one in terms of it just one, I think I focused on it a bit too much in terms of trying to apply to every single pitch battle and message every single investor rather than really trying to focus on making something that people want and solving a
Mm.
problem and getting some traction. I think, but the high level I approach of fundraising, it's a mixture of team, traction, and market. So the challenge is usually if you're a first time founder, and especially if you're all on your own, you might not have the team dynamic. Like for me, like my team side was recent college graduate that hurts
Mhm.
me more than it helps me. Whereas eventually you might have some credibility that you could lean on if you left a big job or something like that. But that's harder early on. So the one I think I messed up on initially was market, where I heard way more, and I'm a big believer now of the Mike Maples school of thought that venture-backed entrepreneurship is less about solving a problem and solution in today's age. And it's more about viewing it as time travel and more about viewing the future 5 years from now, what that looks like, and then coming back to the present, building up for that future. So in other words, trying to work in something that is either going to be in a big market or it's about to grow in a big market. Like the more concrete examples, I worked on a travel app for my first startup, which I thought it's something I'm passionate about and blah, blah, blah. But like the golden age of apps and travel apps was maybe 5 years before that. So I think if I was approaching that today, maybe that same pain point or problem, I might be a bit more creative on thinking like, okay, what does the future look like 5 years from now as relates to this problem? Maybe instead of an app, maybe it's something tied to augmented reality or to AI, things in that kind of realm. It doesn't necessarily apply if you're not raising money, if it's a bootstrap business, but the market is one that I've seen more and more how important that is. But in terms of more tangibly the question of fundraising, it's usually just like talking to a bunch of investors over the course of a couple weeks or months and really just trying to ask feedback or build some relationships. And then if there's some level, like even like asking them what this needs to raise money. And if there's any level of interest, circling them on a sheet and then having some kind of catalyst moment where you follow up with all of them. Maybe you just got a co-founder, maybe you just hit some sort of metric or revenue metric, and then follow up with all of them and say, hey, we're raising money now. And you try to drive that's on traction and FOMO. And I think one of those things where the longer it takes, the harder it is. It's just counterintuitive where if you want to talk with a bunch of people, it's hard to do that over the course of weeks. So it's usually having kind of casual conversations, getting more insight, and then having one moment where you try to follow up with all of them after that.
Interesting. No, that's just networking, right? And just reaching out to people, talking to them, telling them about your ideas. No, I love that. I think that's a super good approach. And yeah, you're not coming off super aggressive, begging for money or whatever. Like I guess I've imagined maybe some people have done before, but no, man, that's super cool. Hopefully I'll get to use that in the future, hopefully more near future. But no, I think that's super good advice. So I also noticed when I was checking out your website, man, that you're a surfer. Is that right?
I love surfing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Did you start when you were little or have you been doing it your whole life?
Yeah, the whole life. I grew up, there's not great surfing in Charleston, but I've lived in some different spots in California and Portugal for a little bit where I've been able to surf a little bit more. But yeah, it's a fun sport. Do you do it?
I personally, I do not surf. I have done it a couple of times out in California and I was able to get up, but I just kind of stay up. I got into skiing like 3 years ago and definitely stuck with that. And it's so much fun, man. Do you ski yourself?
Yeah.
Okay,
cool. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome. I think honestly, dude, like when it comes down to it at the end of the day, no matter what your career is or what you're doing, it's just nice to be able to get away, to disconnect from everything else that's going on and just like clear your head, doing that kind of stuff. So like having some kind of hobby, I think is big, no matter who you are or what you're doing.
I amen to that. I totally agree with that. Especially, I think beach or mountains, it just got to be somewhere outdoors and try to drink it in as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure, man. Super cool. And then I wanted to hit also on the fact that you did a podcast with, I guess, senior citizens, right, about their life. And you did that. How long was that project that you worked on?
I did the Humans in New York, like photograph project over the course of 4 years where I talked with like senior citizens and asked them about life and regrets and things like that. Then during COVID, it shifted. And that was my COVID project, was like a podcast, not a very big one, but maybe 6 or 7 episodes with some people, terminal illnesses, some senior citizens, and just kind of similar kind of questions and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I think I'm sure I haven't listened to the podcast personally. I need to, because I think that's super cool. Just senior citizens, like obviously they have so much experience. They've been through so much in their life. And so just being able to get their take on different things that they've gone through, I think that's huge. And so I did want to ask you the question, by interviewing these different senior citizens, like what was your biggest takeaway from just talking and getting to know them?
Oh man, multiple takeaways. I know like it boiled down to one kind of thing. Like it'd probably be a run-on sentence of a combination of different things of enjoying the moment and appreciating your health and appreciating family and every moment with people around you and taking risks. And I don't know, just like a combination. A lot of people talk about family. A lot of people talk about marriage and relationships. People talked about career. I'd say like in general, like amazed me just how much everyone has such a unique story, particularly senior citizens, where some of them just had just the most amazing stories and would never know just by walking by them. Then
Mhm.
two, like a lot of them, I don't know, it felt like a lot of them wanted to be heard. And I think it's very easy to, I don't like a lot of them just really appreciated the conversation and
Mm.
I think wanted to talk more. And that's what started was I regretted not asking similar conversations as some of my grandparents that had passed and had an amazing conversation with my last grandparent. And we had 3 hour dinner and I was like, holy cow, you are awesome. Like you have this such good insight and wisdom and I want more conversations like this. And it just started it informally and then continued from there.
That's super cool, dude. I feel the same way. So my grandpa, he passed just 2 year, or I guess it was a year ago this past month. And same thing. There's so many stories that even now, like my grandma will tell about him. What in the world?
Yeah.
How did I not have the chance to get to talk to him about that? And it's definitely like I've obviously been trapped in a room with my grandpa where he's just sitting there blabbling off these stories that maybe in the moment I could have cared less about. But I think being older, I definitely appreciate those conversations a lot more. And yeah, there's definitely so much value that a lot of these, I guess, more older people that they just have because of the life that they've lived in. No, I think that's super cool that you're able to do that project and chat with several different senior citizens and just find out a little bit more about their past and what they went through. And yeah, I also think it's cool that they had a lot of those same things that we were talking about, just being able to enjoy life and your friends and your family, and that yeah, your career matters obviously. Like you need a way to support yourself and your family, but at the end of the day, like you need to be able to be happy with what you're doing. No, that's awesome. But yeah, man, I think that's it on my end. But yeah, I appreciate you hopping on. It definitely was a pleasure to chat with you, and we'll have to do something else real soon.
Of course. And likewise, let me know if you're ever in Charleston. Catch
Okay.
up.
Will do. And likewise with Salt Lake, if you ever want to hit the slopes, just hit me up. Thanks again for joining us today on the Nurturist Pod. Hopefully you found some of this content insightful. If you did, make sure to follow, subscribe, and send it to one of your friends. We're also going to be posting this on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple. We got you covered. And we're going to be building out our community in Discord. So make sure to join us there as well. Until next time, thanks.